The observation deck of the Galactic Training Academy fell silent as 37 cadets pressed against the reinforced viewing glass. Below them, in the biodome designated for xeno-wildlife studies, something unprecedented was about to happen. Talia Rhodes stood alone in the clearing, her standard-issue academy uniform dusty from the morning's drills. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her brown eyes tracked the movement in the dense purple foliage ahead. She wasn't supposed to be here. None of them were. But when the distress call had come through about an escaped specimen, Talia had been the first through the airlock. "She's insane," hissed Velktar, a Thoraxian cadet whose scales rippled with anxiety. "That's a Moriku cub. Do you understand what that means?" The other cadets did understand. Moriku were apex predators from Gamma Serpentis 4, a death world that made Earth look like a resort planet. Adult Moriku stood 3 meters tall, possessed retractable crystalline claws that could slice through durasteel, and had a bite force measured in the tens of thousands of psi. Their cubs, while smaller, were still perfectly capable of killing most sentient species. This particular cub had escaped from the xenobiology labs 2 hours ago. It had already injured 3 security personnel and sent a Krell warrior, a species known for their combat prowess, fleeing for medical attention. "Someone needs to stop her," whispered Jolna, a methane-breathing Quarvian whose translator crackled with distortion. "Rhodes is going to be torn apart." But no one moved. They all knew that by the time they reached the biodome floor, it would already be over. In the clearing below, Talia remained motionless. She could hear the cub now, heavy breathing, the crunch of vegetation, the low rumble that reverberated through the ground. Standard protocol dictated she should activate the emergency stasis field, retreat to the airlock, and let the automated systems handle the situation. Talia had never been good at following standard protocol. The foliage exploded outward as the Moriku cub burst into the clearing. It was massive, already the size of an earth lion, with midnight black fur that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Its 6 eyes, arranged in 2 rows across its elongated skull, fixed on Talia with predatory intensity. Saliva dripped from its jaws, each tooth as long as a human finger. The creature roared, a sound that made several cadets in the observation deck cover their auditory organs. Then it charged. In the viewing deck, Cadet Velktar closed his eyes. He didn't want to watch a fellow cadet die. But death didn't come. Instead, Talia Rhodes dropped into a crouch, spread her arms wide, and yelled at the top of her lungs, "Come here, baby Mo!" What happened next would be studied, debated, and analyzed for decades to come. The charging cub, which should have barreled into Talia with the force of a small vehicle, suddenly skidded to a halt. Its 6 eyes widened. Its ears, crystalline structures that typically laid flat against its skull during attacks, perked forward. The Death World Predator, nightmare of a dozen systems, made a sound that could only be described as a chirp. Then it bounded forward and crashed into Talia with enough force to knock her backward onto the ground. "No! No! No!" Velktar couldn't watch, but he couldn't look away. But Talia wasn't being mauled. She was laughing. The Moriku cub, all 600 pounds of apex predator, was on top of her, its massive head pressed against her chest, making a sound that resembled a purr mixed with distant thunder. Its tail, tipped with a venomous stinger that could paralyze an adult Thoraxian, wagged like an earth dog's. "Good boy," Talia's voice carried through the biodome's audio feed. "Yes, you're such a good boy. Were you scared?" I know. Those mean security people didn't understand, did they?" She wrapped her arms around the cub's neck, and the creature responded by licking her face with a tongue that was technically capable of stripping flesh from bone. Instead, it was gentle, almost reverent. "This is impossible," breathed Instructor Cathres, the Xylonian combat specialist who had just arrived at the observation deck. "Moriku are solitary hunters. They don't form bonds. They don't do that." But they were doing exactly that. Talia had somehow coaxed the cub onto its back and was rubbing its belly, the most vulnerable part of a Moriku's anatomy, which they never exposed even to their own kind. The creature's legs kicked in apparent joy, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing in what xenobiologists would later confirm was the Moriku equivalent of contentment. Someone explain this, Cthulhu demanded. A small, nervous voice spoke up. It was Cadet Pixel, a researcher track student. I, I might know, instructor. I've been studying roads. She's from Earth, which is classified as a Class 7 death world. Humans there evolved alongside numerous apex predators, but they did something unusual. They domesticated many of them, turned them into companions. They called them pets. Pets? Cthulhu's translator struggled with the concept. Yes, instructor. Earth has documentation of humans forming emotional bonds with creatures that should, by all logic, kill them. They have a term for it. Cute aggression. When humans see something they find appealing, particularly juvenile creatures, their response is often to cuddle it. That cub killed 3 security personnel because they approached it with weapons and treated it as a threat, Pixel continued, gaining confidence. Rhodes approached it differently. She saw a scared baby, not a monster, and somehow the Moriku responded to that. In the biodome, Talia had finally stood up, still scratching behind the cub's ears, a spot that made its back leg thump against the ground. Come on, baby Mo, she said softly. Let's get you back to somewhere safe, somewhere with food and toys. Would you like that? The cub chirped again and pressed against her leg. As Talia led the deadly predator back toward the xenobiology labs like it was nothing more than an oversized puppy, the cadets in the observation deck stood in stunned silence. Finally, Velktar spoke what they were all thinking. Humans are terrifying. Instructor Cthulhu watched Talia Rhodes disappear through the airlock, the supposedly uncontrollable apex predator, following her like a devoted shadow. The instructor's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. No, cadet, Cthulhu said quietly. Humans are something far more dangerous than terrifying. They're compassionate, and apparently nothing in the galaxy is immune to that.